Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Sangat Ji. Apologies for the little bit of delay, but we are very fortunate and very blessed to have our dearest, most dearest Benji, Dr. Darshan Kaur, here with us to talk about her amazing book called The Path Back to Love. So, Benji, as you already know, I have read your book literally day and night. I read it during the day when my little one's napping away, and I read it at night time with my little night light on, with the little reading light on. And I absolutely could not put it down. And I just kept on reading, and I was completely hooked on it. And I love this book. And I want to say this, I really do. I really love this book. Not because it's not just because it's about saving marriage. You do use that as a really big example in your book, where you talk about marriage, you talk about conflict, you talk about your pain and your inner struggles. But I love this book for that aspect as well. But I also love it because it's quite versatile. The wisdom, the concepts, the analogies, the the message that is there, the practical tips that are there, it could be applied to any relationship. The relationship we have with our children, relationship we have with our family, relationship we have with our in-laws, and most importantly, the relationship that we have with ourselves as well. There's so many personal triggers that come our way, and we're here on a journey together to resolve those things. So what's unique about this book is that it teaches us to experience relationship as a mirror for awakening, as a mirror for healing, where you used Simran as that technique. And it's a journey to return back home, to return back to that stillness that is within us, that we do get glimpses of here and there in our lives, but we don't touch it as often because of the world that is around us and our busy lives. So, Benji, after reading this book feels very personal. Here we're literally walking through the landscape of your mind. He gave us open access to your mind. How does that feel, first of all? And it's a pleasure to be in your mind, by the way. But what was that moment? What was that, that moment that really, where you sat down and you thought, you know what? I need to write about this. I need to talk about my journey. I need to write this down in a form of a book. What was that for you?
So, thank you firstly, Benji, for connecting with me and for your feedback as well on the book. You're absolutely right. Like the story that's contained within those first few pages, my personal story, is very personal. I haven't left anything out. And I think the reason why I've put it in these words in black and white in the book is because sometimes, within the Sangat, within my own work in the therapy and things like that, clients who are struggling within their lives, not just within marriage, but generally, they look at me and they have a certain perception about me that, okay, this Bibi, she's Amritari, she's coming across very shant, and she's, there's clearly, she's clearly a good person, or whatever perceptions people have of me, right? And it's as we're doing the work, as the work's unfolding, I'm very open about my journey with everybody I speak to, because I want people to realize that this path is real, that transformation is possible. And people are only going to realize that if they really see those darkest moments of my life. And, as much as I say it to people, writing it in that way, I really wanted to create the whole story around it, because I didn't want there to be a moment where readers think, oh, but she's had it easy, or her marriage wasn't as difficult, or she's not going to have that much conflict, is she? She's Amritari, or she's a gift, whatever it is that goes through people's minds. So I wanted people to be very, very
Laid it out there. No, that's really fascinating for me, because literally what you just said, that's what I was imagining, that you are a doctor, you're a psychologist, and you are treating numerous, people. And this was something that I never thought that I would come across. Looking at your life, and it's very true that until you really connect, until you really write about your struggles as well, about personal level, only then will the Sangha really, connect with you. So, was there any fear in sharing, so much about your marriage? Like you literally said that you laid out everything on the table and you spoke openly about everything and, about your marriage, your conflicts, all the, inner struggles, the pain. And, you're not the only person in this marriage. It's believe it or not, Vici is there with you. Your husband's there with you. Was there a sense of fear from their end as well? Because that's something important to touch on. How does your husband feel about this? Was there any fear about sharing this information with the whole world?
Yeah, so there was. We've actually been sharing bits about our marriage all the way through over the past years, little bits on our Instagram, little bits in conversations with people. And we've never shied away from doing that because of the hope that we can potentially bring another couple, or somebody going through the same thing. But this is kind of taking it to a different level, right? So we shared moments, we would share that it was difficult, and we would share it in the presence of one another. So I think we both had a recognition that an understanding, mutual understanding that we were doing this for the greater good. And so I think we developed a kind of a comfort with it, right? But then this kind of took it to the next level. And I just assumed that it was going to be fine for me to lay it all out there. And it was actually only like 2 weeks before I was going to print that Habri read it and he was shocked. He was just shocked. He was like, "Oh my God, you wrote this and then you wrote this."
So this is what you were doing when I took the kids outside.
He's like, "Well, at 5:30 you're doing this," but there was an initial, and because you've read the book, Benji, so you know that sometimes when the nervous system kicks in and gets triggered, there's that moment of activation where you kind of you have a very strong, intense emotional reaction. And that occurred, between the two of us for a moment.
Yeah.
And then we stopped and we paused and we came back to stillness, to presence. We spoke about it, right? I could have written this book and then just been like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And legally, he wasn't going to be like, it's my way or the highway, right? So we had to practice what we preach, and we sat together. There were some little tweaks, edits that we made, but I think you talk about fear, but there are lots of other emotions, that come up, like fear, like what people are going to think, like, is this too much? But overriding all of that is an intense, strong passion, desire for somebody to read these pages and to experience a glimmer of hope, and even just a glimmer of hope. And I know, because in those darkest of times, when you feel like you have everything, you have your Sikhi, you have your psychology, you have worldly success, or you have good perceptions of yourself out there in the world, and actually when you still are struggling and very desperate, in those moments you feel like all hope is lost, because you did everything that the world told you to do. You even tried to do everything that Guru told you to do. And then even if in those moments you're breaking and nothing's working, that's when a different experience starts to happen, a real desperation, right? And I'm going to be honest about it. A moment where you feel like, is any of this real? Is psychology real? Is the Sikhi real? And I got to those moments and I share that in the book. And I want people to know, and some people have already messaged me to say that this is me, I'm where I have everything, I have the Sikhi, I have the other things that help, but I still feel desperation. And just reading the words makes me feel like, okay, she's felt like that as well. And now she's talking about transformation. Now she's talking about peace of mind. Now she's talking about a different experience of her marriage. So that overpowers everything for me.
Absolutely. I think that in itself is very overpowering for, everyone really. Like you said, the people that are responding, the readers that are responding, and they're feeling a sense of relatability to you and to the content that's in the book. And, there are so many people out there, although they're not really facing any marital issues, like we said, this book isn't just about marriage, and you've mentioned it in the past as well. And then even despite that, they're feeling a sense of relatability is because, there is that the core message, that's what we need to connect to, and that's what we hear to unfold slowly, but we'll get there. But that's what we hear to unfold. And even some of the messages that you received on Instagram, as you've been receiving so much feedback just in the past week or 2 weeks. Some readers, they have literally said that they felt hopeless before reading this book. They didn't even see a shred of hope and they were ready to give in. Yeah. But after reading the book, something changed, that they found that hope after reading the book. And to a certain extent, they felt liberated as well. And what would you say to someone that is listening right now and who feels that, their marriage or even their life is beyond repair? What would you say to them in this moment?
I would say to them, I've been there, and you can read about my story. And go on to say that
read the book.
Yeah, read the book, but exactly. And like you said, we're gonna try and kind of bring up some of the core messages, and one of the main messages that I share very early on, which Gurbani is telling us, Dukh daru sukh rog paya ja sukh tam na hoi, that we experience dukh within this world and we see it as negative, but when we experience that book and we walk through it and we move through it and we connect with some deeper wisdom within us, deeper wisdom of spirituality, somehow we see that book transforms. It, as in fact, is the very thing, is the doorway through which we needed to walk through in order to see a different version of ourselves, a different version of our light, a different possible future for ourselves. But dukh is like the catalyst, not the breaking point, and that's I share this very much. So if even in my therapeutic work, when clients come in and they see me and they say, like, I'm really struggling, I've got this diagnosis, I've got this label, I'm at the bottom point, and I'm sitting there and inside of me, I'm really excited for this person, because most people are struggling. 99% of people are struggling, but they're living two lives. And I talk about this in the book as well, which is that you have the facade, not for negative intention or to deceive people, but we try and get by within our worldly lives. So we present a version of ourselves to other people, one that seems secure, that's got it together, and I talk about, one of the chapters is actually called Behind Closed Doors. Yeah. So behind closed doors, there's a completely different picture. When we're sitting with ourselves, when we're not plugged into something or other, when we're not getting praise for our work, when, nothing externally is giving us that, any fulfillment or sense of achievement. And we sit with ourselves, man, there's a lot going on in there. And
absolutely.
Those brave and courageous individuals that can slowly start to turn towards that rather than turn away from it. So when I see people struggling, I'm like, this is such an opportunity. Like, if we can just turn towards the struggle this time round, and it's not an easy thing to do. And I don't blame people for doing it first time. I spent 10 years turning away from my struggle, despite being a psychologist. And the turning away is subtle. Sometimes even in adopting a new faith or a new group or a new, I don't know, worldly initiative, it feels like turning towards, but can still be turning away from ourself and the mess within us. So it's very subtle. And when people are really at breaking point, and I talk about dark night of the soul, when there just feels like there's really no way out, for me, that is the greatest opportunity. Because in that moment when nothing is helping, you start to look for something beyond this material realm. You start to look to spirituality. You start to turn towards yourself with honesty. And that is extremely profound. When we read the Gurbani, we see the Gurujis, the Guru Sahibas sharing their vulnerability, their emotions, that, like, there's nothing. Jagat mein jhoothi dekhi preet, apne hi sukh syo sab lag gaya, kya tara kya meet. There's moments of awareness and recognition that nothing here is mine. And it's those moments that then take you towards that internal search for Paramatma, for something beyond this material realm.
Absolutely. So let's look at look at this from sort of like a practical perspective. Let's say you have a couple and they have just newly been married and they're in that honeymoon phase, and let's say that honeymoon phase is gone now. You've been through that, we've been through that. Anyone that's married has been through a beautiful honeymoon phase. Everything is lovey-dovey, everything is great. Oh, I love you so much. We're doing all of that. And then after comes the real stuff, the real work, and the arguments start, the conflicts start. But there's family that's involved as well, that's around them. So there's a lot of caveats to that. There's, those arguments that take place, the conflicts that take place. And I've heard it, there's a saying, "Jithe do bhande hege hai, unhon ne khadkana hi hai." They're gonna like hit each other because they're just there close to each other in the vicinity. So, in those moments where, where there's conflict happening, there's arguments happening, and, someone might think to themselves, if my marriage is hard, maybe, I married the wrong person. And is this something, because you did go through conflict, you did go through a lot of, inner struggle and, in within your marriage as well. And you spoke about it quite confidently and openly, which we all appreciate. And it's quite relatable to a lot of people out there. Is this something that you felt at some point as well within your struggle, within your conflict, within the marriage?
Absolutely. It within a few days, I usually laugh to people and I'm like, people talk about this honeymoon period, right? Mine that long, to be honest with you. I call it there's a scientific thing as well, the oxytocin bubble. There's this understanding within science, right, that when you're getting to know somebody, this is called the bonding phase, you have this hormone of oxytocin running through you, and it alters your perception. So what it does is it allows you to only see most of the positives and overlook some of the negatives. And then once that bonding phase is over, the nervous system resets to whatever it was before. Whatever your default system was before, it resets back to that. So it's scary and unsettling because first, when you're with somebody, you see your best version of you see the best version of them, and you think this is what it was all about. The only reason I was incomplete before, or, I was struggling before, was because I just I hadn't found the right person. I needed the right person to come and understand me, and see me for who I am. And that's now why I'm able to unlock this true version of myself. That's the perception we have, right? So then we honeymoon period where we really are the best versions of ourselves, where our habits are on point, we're waiting. Sorry,
do you mind repeating that, because I think it got cut a little bit because of maybe internet.
Okay.
It's just the last bit, sorry.
So I was just talking about how the Guru says that everything that we need to experience peace of mind is within us. And this doesn't mean to say that somebody, that there aren't problems in the other person, or there aren't flaws in the other person, or in many situations somebody isn't behaving unfairly. That's not to say that. It's about, if you're looking for peace, if you're looking for clarity as to how to navigate this situation, if you want to show up in the best way possible, your highest version of yourself, so that you can make a clear decision on how to navigate, that's going to come from inside, not from outside. So Guru Sab Kesh Karma hai, Bahar Nahi, Bahar Tolle, So Param Pulahi. That the moment that we turn our attention from looking outside to inside, we will find all the answers.
Absolutely, Benji. I think for me that resonates a lot, and the struggle is there. And like you said, we feel a bit trapped, and we sort of sometimes we like misery because it's bringing attention back to our ego that I am the one struggling, and it's sort of like it's like an endless loop, really. And for those that are watching live at the moment, if what Benji just said, if it resonates with you as well as it did with me, please comment in the comment section below and say Vaheguru if it does. And Benji, because you were talking about the dragon and Maya, and I absolutely loved how you have woven Sikhi so naturally into this book. And you talked about different relationships, our everyday struggle, our mind, our nervous system, and emotional healing. All of that using the support of Gurbani. For me, that was quite fascinating. And what and I mentioned this to you as well when I messaged you. I was completely mind blown by your description of Maya. And you're so right that, we normally think, and this is what the translations show us as well, that Maya is an illusion, and we just leave it at that. But the way you spoke about Maya, it doesn't sound like an abstract concept. It's not, it's none of that. If anything, the way you explain Maya, it's way more intimate than that. It's something that plays in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our relationships, like marriage. So it's just a personal question of mine. I was just wondering, how did you come to that realization, that profound, that deep realization that, what, Maya isn't just something that's just floating out there and it's the villain and we have to hide from it, or, it's actually part of us. And like Gurbani talks about the Panchachod as well, they're actually a part of our body. They're inside of us.
Yeah.
And, we'll talk about that in a second as well. But do mention about Maya and how you came to that realization.
So it was a complete game changer for me. I can see kind of you lighting up as you're speaking about it, because that's exactly how I felt when these things started to come together for me. Because before, like, I've always loved Sikhi, I've loved Gurbani, like it's always spoken really deeply to me and given me such a sense of reassurance and support, right? But there was a little bit of a disconnect. So when I would read the Gurbani, I would feel like, my best friend's talking to me, like somebody who understands. But I'd go back into my daily life and have nothing with me, no practical way of managing life, no way of navigating. So I would just, over time, I kind of started to doubt, I guess, the path as well, doubt myself, doubt the path, because I was like, well, this is beautiful. When I sit with the Gurbani and I read it, it fills my heart with so much softness and love. But the moment I step away from the Gutka Sahib or the Keep and my husband standing in front of me, that softness is nowhere to be seen.
Andy, I understand.
So I'm like, something's not right here. Like, what
Yeah.
Gurbani is like promising eternal peace. Gurbani is promising Saj. Gurbani is talking about a life and a mind that's free of kalesh, simar simar sukh pavo, kal kalesh tan mahe mitavo, right? So where is this? It's not showing up for me. And I speak about in the book where I kind of felt a bit disconnected, from everything. And it was the moment that I touched, tasted stillness. The moment that I describe in the book, which um, was actually a moment. Sometimes when we write books, we kind of dramatize things and we're like, oh, this is what happened. And we're like, it changed my life. And I was like, it actually was a moment. I can see that moment in my mind's eye because it actually happened as a moment. Because I remember sitting in the retreat. I was at a place where we were doing Simran together, meditating, which couldn't be further from what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be. Like, I speak humorously slightly in the book, and I talk about how I really was against meditation and Simran, basically. I loved Gurbani, loved Kirtan, but I just thought Simran was extremely simplistic, chanting. And there was one time, you guys can read it, I won't bore you guys with the details, but one time where I forced myself to sit. I was looking at Harbir. This was our honeymoon, by the way. I was looking across and I was like, well, how can he sit for 2 hours and I can sit for like 1 minute? So the stubbornness inside of me was like, I'm just going to sit. No matter what, I'm not going to get up, right? Because if he can do this, I've got a PhD, I've got like this and that. So I had quite a lot of superiority complex. And so I sat. And when I was chanting and I was doing the Gurmantar and I was placing my dhyan in the sound and I was, I was just trying to go along with it. And there was a moment when my thoughts stopped, a moment where my thoughts completely stopped. And I experienced myself in a way I'd never experienced myself before. There was a lightness, there was a softness, there was a love. I wasn't feeling guarded or tense or like I had to show up or something. And it was the most profound experience I've ever had right? And after that, when I started to experience this stillness, this place beyond thought, some of the Gurbani started to make more sense to me. So I was like, I'd never understood that connection was beyond thoughts. Okay, I'm always connected with Gurbani through my thoughts, thinking about Gurbani, contemplating life, making all these formulations about Harbir and his trauma and what kind of whatever personality disorder I think thought he had at the time, or
I read that in the book.
or whatever personality disorder I thought I had, what my parents had, his parents had. So I was always living through my mental analytical, and I couldn't understand when Gurbani would say, you know, Allo agam khudaye bande shod khayal duniya ke tande, like vichar mare tare tare ult juna ave, right? So there was all this stuff that I was reading and never understood it. The moment I touched that place where there was no thought, things started to make sense. I was like, oh my God, is this what Gurbani was talking about? The Nijgar inside of us, the Thirkar, the Sahajgar, that place beyond thoughts. And then when I started to read the Tregun, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what's this Tregun? It's coming up continuously. And I've been reading the Nityanim for my whole entire life, right? Since Bachpan, because we were brought up in an Amritari family. And I'd read again and again, Tehi Guni Sansar, Paramasutta, Sutya Ran Vihani, right? And I kept hearing this Tregun Mette, Chokte, Varte, Iha, Pagat Nirari, like, and I was like, what are these Tregun, right? And at that time, I was trying to practice a bit more, entering into that stillness. And I started coming across YouTube videos. I started coming across pracharaks talking about Tregun in a way that I'm shared in the book. I started seeing that Sant Baba Ishar Singh Ji had spoken about Tregun as well. Like, it's to all come together within my mind. And I was like, I finally started to understand that those Tregun are our thoughts and emotions. And from a psychological perspective, I already knew that, we create about 30 to 60,000 thoughts every day. Every single thought that we think signals a chemical to be released in our body, which is an emotion. And we're circling these thoughts and emotions throughout the day continuously. And the body kind of gets addicted to this, right? So even when we're not trying not to think or trying to show up in a certain way, actually we've practiced certain thoughts and emotions continuously and they become our personality. Gurbani says, kar karna, likh le jao, like it becomes embedded within us. And now the Gurbani is saying the same thing. It's saying that the mind within Tregun, thinking about Rajo is hopes, wishes, desires, anxieties, slander, gossip, nindya, chugli, irka, comparison. Staying within these thoughts and emotions all day long, the mind is disconnected from itself. It's disconnected from Paramatma. It's disconnected from its divine light, its true nature. So when we start to understand these things, like Benji, you experience it now, right? It's profoundly practical. You can monitor your thoughts. You can know your own avastha. You can ask yourself, you can write your own lekha. Gurbani says, Chittar Gupta sab likhte lekha, that we have these entities inside of us, Chittar Gupt, that write our lekha continuously where we spend our breaths. And Guru is saying, you write your lekha, you monitor your own self. Are you in Rajogun? Are you connecting to Naam? Where are you spending your breaths? And then you will have the answer to the question that we all have, which is, why am I not experiencing peace?
So let's say you're in the middle of a conflict, and this is something that a lot of people, come across. And I'm really glad that you touched on the Tragun Maya and, the Rajo and the Sato and the Tamogun. And, we're often, caught up in the heat of the moment, and we're just, even one word can trigger us and send us back, even though it wasn't meant to. It wasn't personal, but it's just because we have conditioned ourselves, or we've made those patterns that have become so, pakke, that we that we find it really hard to let go. And even with myself, that I'm really trying to let go. And I notice within myself that, even with the trying to let go, those that even if, let's say, that trigger comes, it sends me back to the same state that I was in. And even though I'm trying to work so hard on myself, I find myself there. And do you think that the Panchachor also, add on to that, those three forces of Maya, and they add another layer of complexity, within relationships, within conflicts, within disagreements? And what does that look like? You talk about the Panchachor as, almost like the inner forces that hijack us. And even Gurbani talks about the Panchachor, that is dehi andar Panchachor vasahe kaam krodh lobh moh ahankara amrit lute hai man mukh nahi bujhe koi na sune pukara, that they're part of us. And they really are hijacking us in those moments that we give in. We give in to anger, we give in to, desires, we give in to ego, even give in to pride. So what does that look like in a modern relationship? And which point do we get to so that we stop it before they can hijack us? So how do we get to that point? And what did you do personally to get to that point?
That's a really, really good question. So those sponge, this is a kale, right? Gurbani talks about a kale that Paramatma has created. And within this kale, it would be pretty boring if there was just one side, right? Like,
Yeah.
really easy. Like, what kind of tamasha would there be, right? So Guru is saying that actually there is a kale and there's players within this kale, right? You've got the mind that's come into the body to play, the child of Paramatma. And Paramatma's also put those Panchachor in to disconnect the mind from Paramatma. And Paramatma's also put a little part of themselves within, Atma, that is quietly sitting within our body, waiting, calling, trying to samja the mind. But the noise of those panch are so strong and so loud that we don't hear the voice of our Atma. So in the same way, like you said, the panchachor are instructed from the moment the mind comes into the body, that first moment, even before the eyes open. Many of us notice we have an influx of thoughts. What am I going to do for today? Like, how am I going to get this done? Oh my God, it's another day. Yesterday was so bad. Is it going to, that we think that is our internal voice. We've spent lifetimes so disconnected from our Atma. We've made a friendship with our Panch. And actually, if we go deeply into Gurbani, a story unfolds where mind came in. De poali purk bidate janam janam parmande. That when the mind came into the body and it was disconnected from its beloved, its Atma, the only thing it could see was the Panch. So it ran to the Panch. The Panch promised, you listen to us, you follow us, and you will do well within this material realm. So for lifetimes, the mind only had the Panch to turn to. That internal voice that we believe to be ours, Gurbani is saying those vichar are actually the voice of the Panch, those five side. And they're constantly sending instructions. How could he do that to you? You need to do this. What kind of person is she? Look at her. Or, you're no good. All of these vichar were never our internal voice. Slowly, slowly, when we start to understand this kale, we start to be able to recognize moments when Atma has spoken inside of us as well. We start to be able to develop a discrepancy between the two, differentiate between the two, which Gurbani talks about bibek buddhi, right? Start to be able to discriminate. These are my Panch. These are my Atma. And the only way that actually happens is when we clear our mind of vichar, when we do our Simran with full consciousness presence. What starts to happen is we go into that realm of Atma. So we chant Vai, Guru, and the sponge are doing their job, sending the thoughts. But because we have a Puran Guru and they've given us the Gyan that you need to connect to the Gur Mantar, right? So then the mind tries to do that work. Vai, Guru, Vai, Guru, and the Panja sending the thoughts, this battle going on, this jang, Khalsa soe kare nit jang, right? And these Panja sending the vichar, and the mind's like so used to listening to them, it's really hard to pull back. But then a moment comes when the mind starts to listen to the sound of the voice, Vai, Guru, Vai, Guru. And the mind then starts to find moments where it's not listening to the bunch. And when you practice that over and over and over, and you start to touch that stillness, that sehaj, that son, that thirkar, that sehajkar, that nijkar that Gurbani talks about, in real life, when your eyes are open and those bunch are trying to attack, your mind has already started to connect to Atma. So it so much more easily turn its dhyan away from those bunch and bring it into presence of Atma. Then miracles happen. Miracles literally, and you, Benji, will probably be able to share miracles that have happened where somebody says something and the old you would have literally reacted in an, I don't know how to express how I used to react to Habib, but blow their top, right? Like
Yeah.
it's all over, like, you know? And then miraculously, somehow the mind in that moment was able to tune in to Atma, and now there's no reaction. Oh, there's a coolness. Where there was fire, right? Guru says, Tat kadaha bujh gaya Guru Sital Naam diyo. Where there was fire, where there was a heat, suddenly there's a coolness, and you're like, that's weird. And then your partner's like, that's weird.
I'm not used to this. Like, I like this version though.
But it was always our true personality. The sahaj, pyar, the prem, the forgiveness, the non-reactivity. That's actually our true personality.
Like, for those that are listening live, do comment below in the comment section if you have started reading the book, or if you have read the book already. Do put a comment below and talk about, just mention what was the part that hit you the most, what was the part that resonated with you the most, and do mention this in the comments below. And for those that found this quite relatable, do write Vaheguru so that we can then look at this and be like, okay, it's reaching someone, it's reaching there. And Benji, it's so true that what you just mentioned about there's softness that comes within when you try to connect to that stillness. And I kid you not, when after reading this book, I wasn't even finished reading this book. I was trying to, like I said, I absolutely adored, I cannot emphasize this enough, I absolutely adored your little moments of pauses, because that for me was like, okay, I need to stop. I need to reflect on what has been said. I need to digest this and not just read it and actually feel it within. And because of those moments of pauses, those moments of reflection, I think, like you said, that softness comes, and it came for me where, thoughts are coming in, but then I've become a different person now after reading this book. And I've noticed that I've changed a little bit. I've changed. And when that trigger came, I kid you not, it was like, okay, that's fine. And I didn't react to it. And that for me was a really big win. Whereas I would have reacted to something like that. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And for me to let go of that trigger is a big deal. It means that there's something happening. And we haven't even talked about Simran, which we'll talk about now, actually. I haven't even done that. I'm saying it out loud. I hadn't even reached that point yet. And I'm just really sitting with Gurbani, with the way you've talked about the different concepts, the different analogies, and just Gurbani in general, just showing us the light. And I'm just sitting with that and I'm trying to digest that. And if that change can happen from that, imagine what Simran could do, which has changed you and has changed so many lives. So Benji, in the book you initially talk about being stuck, obviously, within the conflict, within the struggles, and even unable to believe that transformation was even possible for you. And despite being a psychologist, like we said, has been using techniques for so many numerous people, and when it came to you, none of this was working out. So what changed and what worked for you?
Vaheguru. So at first, the changes within me that were occurring when I was spending those moments even in presence, right? So when I had that first glimpse that there was something in this Simran, okay, maybe it wasn't just chanting for the sake of chanting or just chanting for the sake of, I don't know, doing a good deed, right? When I started to, when I had those experiences of lightness and my mind not being so cluttered, and when I would then go and be with Harbir or be with family, that I was starting to show up in a less reactive way, right? I was like shocked.
Mm.
I was in disbelief, to be honest, because I really, I know we're meant to believe in change as psychologists, right? But I really didn't. And it only occurred to me how little I believed it. I thought like,
I love how you were open about this.
I
And
we just we've got certain personality traits. We're just stuck with them. Like, we just accept, and like we have to get to a point where just accept ourselves, and we just accept like that this is just life's going to be tough, but try and extract moments of happiness where you can. So I was kind of along that way of thinking. But then Gurbani was like, Gacho Kanchan Peo, Sravan Gur Shabdi Sunio. Like I was like, you could transform glass to like to art, to gold, and we read all these sakhis about Ganika and Sanjan. I was like, I don't know, I feel like I was compartmentalizing everything, right? Like I was like reading that on one hand and like not believing in change on the other hand. But those moments of being different, like, oh my gosh, it just opened everything up for me. That was the moment, when I started to change, when I truly knew Gurbani was true. Okay, like I liked Gurbani before, I loved it, but I had doubts.
I'm sorry, just to mention that you mentioned that you were from the Gursikh background, that obviously you were immersed in Gurbani, you were exposed to Simran and everything, but this specific moment changed your life where you actually felt that Simran within.
Felt it. I felt it. And I actually remember like tears welling up. Like, because there was a part of me that had always believed in God and Vaheguru. Like in the darkest moments, I'd be like, Vaheguru, Vaheguru. No, but I'd always also carried a heavy dose of doubt along with that. But this moment, I felt like Paramatma had showed me that they were real and it was all true. And that just sent me on this whole other trajectory of life. I became a bit obsessed with trying to demonstrate this scientifically. Like, how is this working? Like, I need to tell people. They're not going to believe me if I said, oh, I just did Simran and I started to change. They're going to be like, yeah. Well, it's like, that's how I used to respond as well to people. And I was like, okay, then I started to find out about the vagus nerve, and I started to find out about, the frequency and energy and matter, and I started to find out about quantum physics, and it just took on a life of its own. And
you mentioned the vagus nerve because that was something that you mentioned in the book, and I think the listeners will be benefited from that. So do explain it a little bit when you get a chance.
Have this a vagus nerve within us that's been studied like intensely within the scientific community. Is kind of described as the healing nerve. And like scientists and people within self-development, self-regulation world are always talking about how to activate it. And it's a nerve that connects all of our body, runs through, innervates like the whole body. And when we are dysregulated or under stress or under pressure, that vagus nerve is not being stimulated. So we experience high levels of stress, irritability. We have hormones of cortisol, adrenaline running through us. Now, the moment you activate that vagus nerve, that healing nerve, it turns off your sympathetic system, your fight flight. It actually switches it off, and it's your rest and digest response, which is where you start to feel relaxed and happy and calm. And I remember the first time I read this piece of evidence where they showed what are the things that stimulate the vagus nerve. And it was like chanting, it was like activating your auditory system, your vocalization system. And I was like, oh my God, this is why. Because when I chant and I listen, I'm activating my vagus nerve. And it started to make sense. Why was I now suddenly less reactive? Like, why was I, even if something did stress me out, like, how is it that I was getting back to calm quicker? You know, I was getting all these answers. And it just motivated me even more to see what was in this stillness. So I went through this time during lockdown. I think I talk about it later in the book. And I was like, I'm going to sit because I want to see what else is going to happen to me.
Where the inner doctor within you came out with the experiments.
This is like Gurbani is like, now I believe Gurbani fully, and Gurbani, me, this is just the beginning. Like, this is not just about calm. You can actually experience Paramatma, and I want to do that.
Absolutely.
And and I believed that I could, right? And I'm the biggest skeptic you could ever know. Anything that was remotely mystical, I was like, it can't be true. I had a list of many reasons I could just logic, whatever I thought. But now I'm the most I'm a bit too OTT mystical because I have to go inside and oh my God, like Vaheguru, you start to experience a whole other realm. Gurbani, there's a true home. This is not our desh, dadda dera e nahi. Jeh dera tehjan. Look for that place that's actually your true home. Like this material realm, the things that we see with these eyes, these ears, this tongue, this was a tiny part of our existence. Our true form is pure consciousness, is energy, is divine light. Guru is saying, Man tu jyot sarup hai. And we've not even experienced that. And the invitation. And Guru is saying that when you go into that cave inside your body, that gufa, you will see the sights and the sounds of this mystical realm that Gurbani talks about. Akhi bajo vekhana, vinakanna sunna, jiba bajo bolana, vinhatta karana. Like there is a whole experience of seeing and listening without these physical ears and these physical eyes. And forget the mystical, like even if you just bring it back down to peace of mind, even just being able to experience peace of mind, like who's got peace of mind, hasn't got kalesh within their family, and it's not just me, right? Benji, you've met sangat who just sit together and seen them transform. So this is the whole reason behind this book, to maybe give people a practical guidebook kind of based on Gurbani, to be able to tap into that true home inside.
Absolutely, Benji. For those that are listening live, if you really want to tap into that realm that exists within you, do comment in the section below. Say Vaheguru if you're ready to embark on this new journey with yourself, with the help of this book, The Path Back to Love. And Benji, I'm a person that I can say this with full honesty, that I do find it hard sometimes to sit down. And in your book, you mentioned that you were able to sit for long hours. And, how did you go from that? I remember you saying that you weren't even able to sit for a minute and you saw your husband sitting for a longer time. And you're like, what's going on here? So how did you go from, that person that was only able to sit for even 1 minute to a person that was able to sit for hours? And what is it that you did? And, what can we do who are starting on this journey? They're just starting on this journey. And how do we build that relationship with Simran even after reading this book? And we're like, okay, we're motivated now. This is life changing. This is something we want to experience in real time for ourselves as well, because this is what we're here to do. We're here to experience that love, that stillness that's within us. We're here to experience Vaheguru. And we want to, just like you, we want to touch Vaheguru as well within us. And we want to see Vaheguru in everyone and everything that we see around us. So how do we build that relationship with Simran, and how do we go from point A to not being able to sit even for a few seconds to the point where we're able to sit in that stillness for longer?
The overriding thing that's coming up in my mind is sangat. So when you come together and sit with others who are doing this work, right? it's a very powerful force. A mind that's sitting on its own initially will really struggle to connect because the noise of the punch is so strong, the pull is so strong that the mind will just keep kind of circling those thoughts. And it will be those few moments in between where the mind will settle. And it's those moments, the more of those moments you have, the more and more inspired you feel to sit for longer. If you want to have a good dose of those moments, you want to sit within Sangat, because within Sangat, like, you can't really just get up and be like, okay, I'm done after 2 minutes. Whereas at home, we'll start, right, with good intent. And then, like, I don't know, you'll start thinking, oh, I needed to buy that Amazon basket, or I needed to do this. And, you just get up. You're like, okay, I've done enough. Like, I'm done. You go to Sangat and everybody's sitting there for the same purpose. And that collective vibration will give you more and more of those moments of peace and stillness. And then you'll be excited to sit. You'll be like, I wonder what's going to happen now. Like, when I go into that place of stillness, it's not a discipline thing. It's not a discipline thing. It's a yearning to experience stillness again and again.
I'm just going to add another layer to that, not to make things more complex, but let's say we go into that, we start doing Simran, and then I think you mentioned this in the book as well, where you reach a certain point and you're thinking to yourself, is this it? Have I made it? Have I reached? So how did you get to that point, and how did you overcome that point? Because like you said, there's so much to see, and we sort of like, maybe it's the punch playing a role, maybe it's in the forces of Maya trying to pull us back into that attachment with the world, and they're like, okay, तू ज़्यादा कर लिया हूँ I've given you कुछ ज़्यादा छुट्टी देती तैनू now you need to come back in. So is that what's happening when we're like, okay, you know what, this is good, we reached there, and we're going to settle down now? Is that something that you experienced as well?
That's exactly what happens. And when the mind starts to connect and starts to experience that peace, those sponge are like, hang on a minute, like, we need to do our job now, which was to disconnect this mind. So kinds of things start to happen that seem like obstacles. Like Gal actually, which is the leader of the Panj, Gurbani says, Tregun Kale hi sirkara, that the Kal is the leader of these Tregun. And Kal has control over everything from this body onwards. So when this game was created, Paramatma gave Kal Khand, Patal, Deep, Sab Loa, Kale Vas Aap Prabh Kiya. Like all of the Khand Brahmand, the Sarir, everything Maya, Kal has control over. So they start to play a little bit with the Santolan. Sometimes with health gets a little bit, sometimes the wealth gets less. Sometimes our partners or friends start to say things like, why are you doing this? Or this ish. All of these things start to happen when we try to connect. And again, if we're coming into Sangat, or we have some connection to this wisdom, we're listening to it again and again. Gurbani says, Nitya jai baho sat sangati, jite har ka har naam biloye. Like, we need to like immerse ourselves in the Sangat. Like, I know practically, physically, sometimes it's not possible, but now we've got technology. And if we're listening to this wisdom again and again, it's going to be harder for Maya to pull the wool over our eyes. Let's say we start doing Simran, and then our partner starts saying, why are you doing that? Uchi kate Simran, kar de aja. You got all these imperfections. This was something me and Harbir used to say to each other early on. Like, you're doing Simran, it's clearly not working, is it?
This is not the right way.
and for a moment, if the mind just goes a bit unconscious, right, it starts to listen to the bunch. But the moment you step into Sangat again, the reminders come again. Those were your panj, not your atma,
Absolutely.
When the intention is there, when we start to touch, Paramatma's presence, then naturally Guru blesses us with more and more opportunities to do that. We'll find Sangat appearing out of nowhere, somebody messaging us to say, let's do Simran together, So it's like, it's miraculous. Guru says you take one step, Guru takes 1,000 steps, right? So this is true, the reality.
Definitely, Benji. And do mention the group that you're involved in where you do Simran. For those that cannot access or cannot be there physically, but you do have links that you send out to within the group, within the WhatsApp group and Instagram group as well, I believe, Instagram as well, where Sangat can access it, even being miles away. So
Yeah.
do mention that.
We've got the Sikh Spirituality Network. So we have a Telegram group channel. We have a WhatsApp group. We do regular in-person and Zoom online events as well. Weekly, we have 3 online events that you can tune into and just listen to. And, we're really fortunate that Basics also gives us lots of opportunities to get involved with Basic Sangat as well. So that's brilliant. And Basics is focusing a lot on Simran as well, which is just beautiful. So it's coming up. Everybody, it's everywhere now. We're starting to realize the piece was the practice.
Yes. We're getting to the practicality of it, and that's where we need to be. We know the theory. We've, studied it so many times. We've learned it so many times. It's about the practicality, and that's what our gurus did as well. They lived it. They didn't just talk about it, they actually lived it. And then when they talked about where they were, the place they were, why does it hit us so much? Is because it's an experience. Is because they lived it. And, this is why this book, for me, has been very powerful. And I did mention to you that you must have really sat down, within the depth of your inner being to be able to compose this, and, for you to be able to, look inwards and within your journey. And we're coming to, near the end of this Instagram live. And for someone who hasn't read this book yet, what would you say? Who is this book exactly for? Because we've mentioned a lot of different things now, a lot of different concepts. So who do you think this book is exactly for?
This book is for anybody who's tired of the life that they're living and has a sense that there's something more, something greater that they can access, And so, many of us have that quiet voice within us that is like, there's something more. There's a greater purpose, there's peace that we can touch. And we often just bat that voice to the side and, don't listen to it. But if anybody is at that point where they're just, they can hear that voice a little, you want to try and read this book, yeah.
And, if a person, a couple, or even a seeker that, takes just one thing away from the path back to love, what would you hope it to be?
For them to recognize that no matter what life situation they are, no matter what deeds or misdeeds they've done, no matter what kind of person they think they are or they're not, they have everything within them to live a beautiful life of peace, of love, of connection. And that's the main message I want to share. And, Guru is telling us that we are the divine light. Simply just by us being in this human body, having this opportunity, we have access to our true state. Manitu Jot Sarup hai, apna mool pashan.
For those that are listening live, if you really want to experience that true state, do comment below and write true state so that we can get the journey started. And this is, a way of us saying that, yes, we're going to, embark on this journey together. Thank you so much, Benji. It's been a real pleasure talking to you about this amazing, like I said, for me, it's an amazing gift to the whole of humanity. And we really hope that, the Sangat that was listening today, tuning in, get this book ASAP and start reading this. And for those that don't know, Benji do write a really nice, cute little message for you to read. So if this is not enough, maybe that message will definitely motivate you to get going and order this book online. And Benji will tell you the details as well. And Benji, before we leave, also mention the if there's any other event that is happening where you're launching this book and you're talking about this book, do tell the Sangha so that they can connect through that as well.
Hanji, so we have a book launch event where it's going to be an immersive afternoon where we explore these concepts and experience them firsthand. So we'll have Simran, we'll have Q&A, we'll have a conversation with myself, and it's going to be on the 30th of May in Slough. And you can find out all the information on my Instagram, which is at Dr. Darshan Kaur. There's also the link to purchase the book as well. It will be on Amazon very soon. So if you do want a personalized message, get that in soon, because Amazon's not going to allow me to do that. But it would be a blessing to see you at the launch, but also to join some of the remote events. I will share some more details on my Instagram. We have one on a Sunday morning, which is on Telegram. We have a Monday morning session in Slough, which is also streamed live. We also have a Sunday evening session that's streamed live. So Guru Kripa, we'd love to connect with you all, our Sanjogis, our siblings of destiny that have an opportunity now to experience the highest possible state that we can within this physical human body. Hanji.
Thank you so much, Benji. Thank you for taking our time for this. And I enjoyed talking to you. And, you have uncovered so much, so many things that are just really jewels of wisdom within this book with Maharaji's Kirpa. Again, not just praising the body, praising the one that gave you this body, gave you this mat, that gave you that intellect and that thought, that put that thought within you to begin to write this book as well. So thanking to that higher power, the divine Vaheguru, for truly giving us this gift for humanity through you. We're very, very thankful, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you at the launch. And if you would like to get Benji's darshan, pun intended, Benji's darshan, and if you would like to get the darshan of this book as well, and have that interaction with Benji as well, do come to the launch. There's an Eventbrite link, I believe, that will be shared hopefully soon, and you can get access to that as well. And thank you so much, Benji. Thank you for tuning in. And I really hope that the Sangat definitely rushes in to buy those books and get those personal messages in before Amazon gets to them. So thank you so much, Benji. Thank you. Thank you. Truly feeling very blessed. Vaheguru. Vaheguru. So let's end the session with just a little bit of Vaheguru Simran. I think that would be really cool. And then we can say our fatehs.
So we're just gonna briefly disconnect a little from this material realm and just close the eyes and see if we can attune our consciousness, our dhyan, our mind to the Gur Mantra. And Guru gives us a beautiful technique. Guru says that to still this wandering mind, you need to give it an asara, a support. And one such support Guru gives us is the sound of our voice. Guru says, Tun meh dhyan, dhyan meh janiya, Gurmukh akat kahani. So as we chant, as we recite the Gur Mantra, we want to bring our dhyan to rest in the sound of our own voice. So when we chant Vahe, we listen to the sound. And when we chant Guru, we again bring our mind to rest within that sound. Vai Guru, 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 Vai Guru. So please forgive any mistakes Guru Pyare made during this talk. And with Guru Sahib's Kirpa, we'll get more and more opportunities to connect with each other as Sanjogis and with our true divine mother and father. Vaheguru Ji
Ka Khalsa,
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।